I never thought I would be in this situation, but recent events have forced me to share my story. I've been married to my husband Jack, 32M, for 4 years, and while our marriage started wonderfully, his family has always been a source of tension, particularly regarding his sister Amy, 35F. Some background about Amy: she's been struggling with drug addiction since she was 16. It started with marijuana and quickly escalated to harder drugs. She dropped out of high school in her senior year and has never held a steady job. Her parents, my in-laws Tom, 65M, and Sarah, 62F, have enabled her behavior for nearly 20 years now. They've paid for multiple rehab stays, countless apartments, cars, and legal fees. Every time Amy claims she's clean and ready to turn her life around, they believe her and pour more money into helping her start fresh. But it always ends the same way, with Amy relapsing and disappearing for weeks or months, only to return when she needs more money. I met Jack 5 years ago at a mutual friend's wedding. He was different from his family, responsible, hardworking, and seemingly aware of how toxic their enabling of Amy had become. During our dating period, he often expressed frustration about how his parents handled Amy's addiction. He told me stories about how they'd emptied the retirement accounts multiple times to bail Amy out of trouble, and how she'd stolen from them repeatedly, but they always forgave her because she's sick and needs help. When we got married, Jack promised me that we would maintain strong boundaries with his family, especially regarding financial matters. We agreed never to lend money to Amy or get involved in her drama. This worked well for the first 3 years of our marriage, mainly because Amy was living in another state with her boyfriend and only contacted the family when she needed money. Everything changed 6 months ago when my beloved Aunt Helen passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack. Helen had practically raised me after my mom, her sister, died from cancer when I was 12. She never married or had children of her own, instead devoting her life to her career as a pediatrician and to being there for me. Growing up, I spent every weekend at her house. She helped me with homework, attended all my school events, and was basically my second mother. When I got married, she was the one who walked me down the aisle since my father wasn't in the picture. Helen's death devastated me, but what I didn't expect was her leaving me her entire estate worth approximately $900,000, including her beautiful Victorian house that she'd lovingly restored over the years. I knew she was well off, but the inheritance came as a complete surprise. In her will, she wrote that she wanted me to have financial security and hopes that I would continue maintaining the house she loved so much. The problem started when Amy moved back to our city 3 months ago after breaking up with her boyfriend. She was living with Tom and Sarah again and somehow found out about my inheritance through family gossip. At first, it was just occasional hints about how she needed money for a fresh start. Then the calls started coming daily. She would call or text at all hours, sometimes crying about being broke and hungry, other times angry and demanding that I help her because that's what family does. I blocked her number after she started sending threatening messages about how I was hoarding money while she suffered. That's when she started showing up at our house unannounced. The first few times, Jack turned her away, but I could see he was wavering. His parents were constantly calling him, telling him how cruel it was that we had so much money but wouldn't help his sister. The situation reached a breaking point last month when Amy showed up at our door at 2 a.m., clearly high on something. She was screaming about how I was a selfish bitch for not sharing my aunt's money with family who needed it. When I refused to open the door, she tried to break in through a window. I had to call the police to remove her. Instead of being concerned about their daughter's behavior, Tom and Sarah were furious with me for involving law enforcement. They showed up at our house the next day, yelling about how I could have ruined Amy's life by getting her arrested. What really hurts is Jack's reaction to all this. He started suggesting that maybe we should give Amy some money to keep the peace in the family. When I reminded him of our agreement about boundaries, he said this was different because it wasn't our hard-earned money but an inheritance that fell into my lap. His parents call him daily to guilt-trip him about how I'm destroying the family with my selfishness, and I can see their manipulation is working. I've tried explaining to them that giving Amy money would only enable her addiction, but they won't listen. Sarah actually told me that if Amy dies from an overdose, it will be my fault for not helping her when I had the means to do so. They seem to think that because I didn't earn this inheritance, I have no right to decide how it's used. The money and house from Helen means so much more to me than just financial security. They're my last connection to the woman who stepped in as my mother when I lost my own. The house is filled with memories of my childhood and teen years. The thought of selling it or using that money to enable Amy's addiction feels like a betrayal of Helen's memory. But the constant pressure from my in-laws is taking a toll on my marriage. Jack has started sleeping in the guest room because of our arguments about this. His family's manipulation is working. He's beginning to see me as the villain in this situation. I don't want to lose my marriage, but I also won't disrespect my aunt's memory by enabling someone's addiction. I feel stuck between protecting my inheritance and saving my marriage, and I honestly don't know what to do anymore. Update 1 first, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. Reading your responses helped me realize I wasn't crazy for wanting to protect my inheritance. Unfortunately, things have gotten much worse since I last posted. Last week, I got a call from Mrs. Jenkins, my Aunt Helen's next-door neighbor of 20 years. She was hysterical, telling me she'd heard glass breaking and saw someone climbing through a broken window at Helen's house. I immediately called the police and rushed over there. By the time I arrived, 3 police cars were already at the scene, and my heart nearly stopped when I saw who they were putting in handcuffs, Amy. The damage she caused is devastating. She broke in through the kitchen window and systematically went through every room in the house looking for valuables. The antique secretary desk where Helen kept her medical journals was completely destroyed. Family photos dating back to the 1940s were torn from their frames and scattered across the floor, many of them damaged beyond repair. These included the only photos I had of my mother from her childhood. The worst part was Helen's bedroom. Amy had dumped all the drawers out, thrown clothes everywhere, and even ripped open the mattress looking for hidden valuables. She found Helen's jewelry box, the one containing my grandmother's wedding ring that Helen had promised to give me on my 30th birthday, and emptied it completely. When the police searched her, they only found a few pieces. She'd already sold most of it to a pawn shop for drug money. But here's where things get even more twisted. While the police were taking Amy's statement, she kept insisting she had permission to be there. That's when I found out something that made me physically sick. Jack had given her a key to the house. My husband, who had promised to support me in maintaining boundaries, went behind my back and gave my drug-addicted sister-in-law access to my property. When I confronted Jack that evening, his excuses made everything worse. He admitted that his parents had been pressuring him for weeks about Amy needing a place to stay. They convinced him that if Amy had a stable living environment, she might finally get clean. They painted this picture of Amy living in the house, getting a job locally, and rebuilding her life. Jack actually believed she would respect the property because it was family helping family. I was speechless. Not only had he betrayed my trust, but he also couldn't see how naive and manipulated he'd been. This was the same Amy who had stolen from her own parents countless times. The same Amy who had sold her mother's cancer medication for drug money 3 years ago. Yet somehow Jack thought she would respect my aunt's house? Within hours of this revelation, Tom and Sarah started calling nonstop. They were trying to convince me not to press charges against Amy. Sarah was crying about how jail would ruin Amy's life, how she's sick and needs help, not punishment. Tom offered to pay for all the damages if I would drop the charges. When I refused, he switched to threats, saying if I sent his daughter to jail, he would make sure everyone in the family knew what a vindictive person I was. Jack sat there during this entire conversation, saying nothing while his parents berated and threatened me. That was the moment I realized my marriage was probably over. The man I married, the one who had promised to stand by me and maintain boundaries with his family, had disappeared. In his place was someone who would rather betray my trust than stand up to his parents. I packed enough clothes for a few weeks and checked into a hotel. I couldn't stay in our house knowing Jack had betrayed me so completely. In the past 48 hours, my phone has been flooded with messages from Jack and his family. Jack keeps apologizing, saying he never thought Amy would steal anything, that he was just trying to help his sister. His parents have been telling everyone in the family that I'm overreacting, that good families forgive each other and work things out. But this isn't about forgiveness. This is about trust and respect. Jack knew how much that house and its contents meant to me. Those photos and heirlooms were my last physical connections to my mom and aunt. He knew Amy's history of theft and destruction, yet he still gave her access to my property without my knowledge or consent. That's not a mistake, that's a deliberate betrayal. I've contacted a lawyer to discuss my options. She confirmed that since the house was inherited by me personally and we've only been married 4 years, Jack has no claim to it. She's also helping me file a restraining order against Amy and documenting everything for potential divorce proceedings. Some family members have reached out to say I'm being too harsh, that Jack was just trying to help his sister and made a mistake. But I don't see it that way. A mistake is forgetting to lock a door. Deliberately giving someone a key to property that isn't yours, knowing the owner wouldn't approve? That's a calculated decision to violate my trust and disrespect my boundaries. Right now, I'm staying at the hotel while my lawyer handles the legal proceedings. The police are still trying to track down the jewelry Amy sold. Every time I think about walking through that house and seeing the destruction, seeing my family photos destroyed and my aunt's belongings violated, I feel physically ill. But what makes me even sicker is knowing that my husband, the person who was supposed to be my partner and protector, was the one who made it all possible. Update 2. I wish I could say things have gotten better since my last update, but the reality is even worse than I imagined. What I've discovered in the past few weeks has completely shattered any remaining doubt about whether I should try to save my marriage. Last week, I had a meeting with my lawyer to discuss the divorce proceedings. During our review of financial documents, she noticed something odd. Jack had been making regular payments to a law firm specializing in guardianship cases. When she investigated further, what she uncovered made my blood run cold. Jack, Tom, and Sarah had been quietly building a case to have Amy declared mentally incompetent due to her drug addiction. Their plan was to become her legal guardians and then sue me for part of my inheritance on Amy's behalf, claiming she was entitled to family support due to her disability. My lawyer found a chain of emails between them and their attorney discussing their strategy. They had been planning this for months, even before Amy's break-in. The emails revealed that they'd been documenting every time I refused to help Amy, painting me as a cruel person who was denying support to a disabled family member. They had even hired a private investigator to dig into my Aunt Helen's past, hoping to find something they could use to challenge the validity of her will. The most shocking part? Amy's break-in wasn't just a desperate attempt to steal valuables, it was part of their plan. They were looking for my aunt's original will, financial documents, or anything else they could use to strengthen their case. The emails showed Jack had given Amy detailed instructions about where Helen might have kept important papers. They didn't expect her to destroy everything in the process, that was just Amy being Amy, but they were willing to risk my aunt's precious belongings for their scheme. When I confronted Jack with this evidence, his response left me stunned. Instead of showing remorse or trying to deny it, he attempted to justify their actions. He said they were just trying to help Amy the legal way since I was being unreasonable about sharing the inheritance. He actually believed they were doing the right thing. In his mind, using the legal system to try to force me to give up my inheritance was perfectly acceptable because it was for family. The level of calculation and betrayal is staggering. While I was grieving my aunt and trying to protect her legacy, my husband was actively working with his family to take it away from me. Every time he comforted me about the break-in, every apology he made, it was all an act while they worked on their legal strategy behind my back. I immediately filed for divorce and got a restraining order against Amy. My lawyer is also looking into pressing additional charges for the planned fraud. She says their emails provide clear evidence of conspiracy, which could lead to serious legal consequences for everyone involved. The in-laws have completely lost it since their scheme was exposed. They've started telling everyone that I'm mentally unstable and trying to destroy their family. Sarah has been calling my friends and colleagues, telling them I'm having some sort of breakdown and making up lies about her family. Tom has been threatening to expose me, though I'm not sure what he thinks he can expose since I'm not the one who is plotting fraud. The only silver lining in all this is that several of Jack's extended family members have reached out to support me. His Aunt Clara, who had dealt with Amy's theft before, called to tell me she had witnessed similar manipulation tactics from Tom and Sarah over the years. She gave me names of other family members Amy had stolen from, whose complaints were dismissed or covered up by her parents. I'm now staying with a friend while my lawyer handles everything. The house is being repaired and I'm having a top-of-the-line security system installed. Most of the damaged photos have been digitally restored. It cost a fortune, but it was worth it to save those memories. The jewelry is still missing, but the police have leads on which pawn shops Amy visited. What hurts the most isn't even the betrayal, it's the realization that the entire 4 years of my marriage might have been built on lies. Was Jack always this manipulative, or did his parents' influence change him? Did he ever really love me, or was I just a convenient target once they found out about my inheritance? I'll probably never know the truth, and honestly, at this point, I don't even want to know. I just want to get through this divorce and move on with my life. Update 3: I'm finally ready to share what will probably be my last update on this situation. The past few months have been a whirlwind of legal proceedings and family drama, but I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. The divorce is almost finalized. Jack initially tried to contest it, claiming he deserved part of my inheritance since he supported me emotionally through my aunt's death. His lawyer quickly shut that down after seeing all the evidence of the guardianship scheme. Jack ended up accepting a simple divorce settlement where we each keep our own assets. He's also agreed to pay my legal fees as part of the settlement, probably to avoid me pressing fraud charges over their guardianship plan. Amy's situation has taken an unexpected turn. During her arrest for the break-in, the police found a significant amount of drugs in her possession. Because she has prior convictions, she's facing serious jail time. The prosecutor offered her a deal: if she testified about the guardianship scheme and who put her up to searching for documents during the break-in, they'd recommend a lighter sentence. She took the deal and gave them everything, including text messages from Jack and her parents coaching her about what to look for in the house. Tom and Sarah's reputation in the family has been completely destroyed. Their carefully maintained image of being the devoted parents trying to help their troubled daughter has crumbled. Several family members have come forward with stories about how Tom and Sarah had manipulated them over the years, always using Amy's addiction as leverage to get money or favors. Jack's cousin told me they pulled a similar scheme with their grandfather's inheritance 10 years ago, but the family had covered it up to avoid scandal. The most surprising development has been the reactions from Jack's extended family. His Aunt Clara has become one of my strongest supporters. She helped me find contractors to repair the house and even connected me with a security consultant who specialized in protecting properties from drug-addicted family members. Apparently, it's more common than you'd think. Several of Jack's cousins have reached out to apologize for believing Tom and Sarah's lies about me being mentally unstable. I'm moving into my aunt's house next week. The renovation is complete, and the new security system would make Fort Knox jealous. The contractors managed to save most of the original features of the house that my aunt loved so much. Walking through it now, I can still feel her presence, but without the painful memories of the destruction Amy caused. Jack made one last attempt to contact me through a mutual friend. He wanted to meet and explain his side of the story. I declined. There's nothing he could say that would justify what he did. His parents have finally stopped their smear campaign, probably because their own lawyer advised them that they were risking a defamation lawsuit. Amy is still in jail awaiting sentencing. Sarah tried to guilt me into writing a character reference letter for her, saying it would help get her into a rehab program instead of prison. I refused. After everything they've done, they still think they're entitled to my help. Some things never change. I've learned a lot through this experience. The family you're born into or marry into doesn't automatically deserve your loyalty, especially when they show no loyalty to you. I'm grateful for my Aunt Helen, not just for the inheritance, but for showing me what real family love looks like. She supported me without trying to control me, loved me without using that love as a weapon, and trusted me to make my own decisions about her legacy. The house is now legally protected with a trust, something my lawyer suggested to prevent any future claims against it. I'm looking forward to making new memories there, ones that honor my aunt's memory rather than trying to erase it like my in-laws attempted to do. Sometimes losing a toxic family is actually a gain, and that's a lesson I won't forget.